Oh, did I scare you? Oh, you want scratches? Hey guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be starting the 12 days of Christmas on my channel, where I'm going to be doing a mystery video every day for the next 12 days until Christmas. I'm so incredibly excited. It's the reason that I haven't posted in over a week on my channel, because I've been working so hard to get all of this ready for the next 12 days. So I really hope you guys enjoy. If you're as excited as I am, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and let's go ahead and get into the first case. So today we're going to be starting off with the case of the Papin sisters. The Papin sisters came from a very troubled home, and their whole life pretty much was going sideways before they were even born, if that's even possible. Their mother Clemence and their father Gustave were having some problems before their children were even born, before they were even married, because there were all these rumors going around that Clemence was having an affair with her boss, and so many rumors. But Gustave, it was really heartbreaking because he really loved Clemence, so he wanted to kind of turn a blind eye to it. I think he wanted to believe or convince himself that it wasn't happening or that the rumors weren't true. So he, I guess, just turned a blind eye to it. In October of 1901, they found out that Clemence was actually pregnant with their first child, and so because of the social standards at the time, they kind of rushed to get married before their first daughter, Amelia, was born in February of 1902. Now, they were horrible parents, honestly. They were just not fit to be parents. Clemence was not fit to be a mother. She was mentally unstable. She was extremely distant from her family, probably because of the affair that she was having. And she just wasn't interested in her family at all. She pretty much was not talking to Gustave. She was completely ignoring Amelia. And Gustave, because of how he felt about the relationship, ended up turning to alcohol. He became a real alcoholic and abusive because of it. 2 years after Amelia's birth, the rumors were still kind of circling that Clemence was having an affair, so Gustave was finally fed up with it. He decided that he was going to apply for a job in another town to get away from Le Mans, France, which is where they were living, just to, I guess, start afresh and get her away from her boss if she was having an affair, or I guess to kind of prove that the rumors weren't true. So when he told Clemence, she did not like this, to say the least. She actually threatened to commit suicide if she had to leave Le Mans, which kind of confirmed the rumors and confirmed Gustave's suspicions that she was having an affair. Eventually, she did kind of come to her senses, and they moved to a new town and kind of started afresh, I guess, which is when in 1905 they gave birth to their second daughter, Christine. And immediately after they gave birth to Christine, Clemence just decided she wanted nothing to do with her. She didn't want a second child. It was all too much for her, which I don't know why she had a second child in the first place, if that's the case, but she decided to give Christine immediately to Gustave's aunt, where Christine stayed for 7 years. Then, in 1911, despite what happened with Christine, Clemence gave birth to another child named Leah. And just very shortly after, right after Leah was born, Clemence discovered that Gustave had been molesting their eldest daughter, Amelia, who was 10 or 11 at the time. So she obviously divorced Gustave, but not for the reason that you would think. Not because he literally molested her daughter and was literally a pedophile, but because she wanted to punish him for cheating on her. And she fully blamed 10-year-old Amelia for the rape, saying that she seduced him and that is the only reason that he did what he did. So she sent Amelia to an orphanage called Le Bon Orphanage, or Le Bon Catholic Orphanage. Amelia then later joined the convent and became a nun, which some people believe is because of what happened with her father. So right after the divorce, Clemence decided to take Leah and put her with her great uncle and great aunt, and then at the same time she took Christine from Gustave's sister and put her in the same orphanage that Amelia was at. Once Christine got to the orphanage, her and Amelia became so close because, you know, they're sisters living in this scary environment. I cannot imagine how terrifying it would have been for them, so I guess they kind of lent on each other and looked to each other for comfort. And this was a very long time ago, obviously, so the timeline is a little bit unclear, but at some point after the divorce, both Christine and Leah were said to have spent time in mental institutions. So as I said, Amelia soon joined the convent and became a nun, and Christine really wanted to follow in her footsteps. I'm sure, you know, they'd been at the same orphanage, kind of leaning on each other. They were super close, so I guess she looked up to her older sister and wanted to do what she was doing. But Clemence absolutely would not let Christine pursue this because Christine, she was kind of average intelligence, smarter than Leah anyway, who was not apparently very intelligent, and she had a much stronger personality than Leah, so she pulled Christine out of the orphanage so that she could find her a job as a cook, so that she could go and earn money and I guess support her mother. She didn't let Christine have any of the money she earned. She used it all herself. And Christine was a pretty good cook actually, but she was kind of rude and kind of very quiet, but other than that, she was a good employee, good cook, just a little. And Christine was actually a pretty good cook. She was a good employee, but she was kind of rude and kind of distant, very quiet and very distant. Then eventually Clemence's great uncle died, the one who was looking after Leah, so she decided to put her in an orphanage for a very short amount of time before sending her off to work as well, so that she could have both of their incomes, I guess. She began looking for maid work for the girls because Christine had learnt kind of basic domestic skills at the orphanage, and she could kind of take Leah under her wing, maybe do some work for her while teaching her what she needed to do. So she put them to work, she would take their entire income, she was constantly having them change jobs, you know, because she'd find one that paid more, so then she'd put them at that job, and then she'd keep looking and find one that paid a little bit more, so she'd swap them to that job, and just, it was kind of a cycle. Despite the differences in age and the fact that they hadn't spent much time together at all, once they started working together and, you know, both were able to see each other in their spare time, they started to lean on each other as well. They got really close. Whenever they had a spare moment, they would seek each other out and just always wanted to spend time together every time they had the chance, basically. In 1926, Christine managed to land a job as a maid and a cook at the home of a retired lawyer, Monsieur Lancelin, and his family. He lived with his wife, Leonie, and his daughter, Genevieve. He also had a second daughter, but she was married and living out of home at the time. So after a few months of work and the fact that she had been doing good work, she was a good maid, a good cook, she convinced them to take Leah in as a chambermaid. They worked 14-hour days, and Madame Lancelin was said to be extremely harsh and very particular. Like, she would go up to, I don't know, flat surfaces and put her hand along them. If there was dust, she would go off and get mad at the girls. Like, everything needed to be done to absolute perfection, to her absolute perfection. She would take money from them if things weren't done to her standards, and she would constantly check on them throughout the day to make sure they were doing what they needed to do and it was done to her standards. I guess, I don't know if it was harshness, if she was just rude, or if she wanted to take money from them. Now, this job was a live-in job, so they spent 14 hours there. They would have breaks in this 14 hours and then they would go and sleep there. They had a little, like, maid's quarters, which was a dingy little room with two small, uncomfortable looking beds. And the girls were incredibly close. They kept to themselves. They didn't really speak. On their breaks, they would hang out together. They chose not to really leave the house, except occasionally on Sundays they would dress up and go to church, and sometimes they would go to a local fortune teller who told them that they had been a, like, man and woman, like, wife. They were married in a previous life. But other than that, they didn't really do anything. They didn't really have any activities. They just stuck to themselves, stayed inside the house. They didn't go dancing. They didn't go looking for a husband. They just did nothing, really. But yeah, Monsieur Lancelin and the family thought that they were so lucky because they had these girls who were obedient, well-behaved, quiet. They didn't want to go out, look for other jobs or anything. They just stayed, kept to themselves. They did their work well. But there were a few people that thought they were weird. Local shopkeepers thought they were very strange. And one time before that, Christine had a job for only 15 days because they didn't like the way that she worked and thought that she was rude. But the Lancelin family absolutely loved them. They got paid well, they had a heated room besides the fact that it was a little bit dingy. And also despite the fact that Madame Lancelin was kind of a hard ass, I guess, and was very particular and, you know, kind of harsh, they actually ended up getting along with her pretty well. They ended up calling her, I think it was Maman, some sort of name that they saw her as a mother figure basically and started referring to their own mum as that woman. And Madame Lancelin started, you know, sticking up for them. She found out that they were sending all of their money back to their mum and encouraged them not to do that and to keep the money for themselves. But it kind of started to go downhill a little bit. So she was really nice at first despite being a little harsh, but then something just changed. She started becoming ruder. She started pinching them. She started physically abusing them when they did something that wasn't to her standards. She even went as far as to, one time there was like a tiny little piece of scrap paper or something on the floor and she made her get onto her knees to pick it up for her. And yeah, she just was not a nice person. And the girls were sick of it. Leah ended up confiding in Christine, saying that if anything like that ever happened again, that they absolutely would do something to stick up for themselves and to defend themselves. So by 1933, the Papin sisters had been with the Lancelin family for 6 years. Christine was 27 at the time and Leah was 21. And Madame Lancelin was just getting really bad. Like, she was bad at this point. So on the 2nd of February in 1933, Leonie, Madame Lancelin, and her daughter Genevieve went out of the house for a little while. They were supposed to meet Rene, who was Monsieur Lancelin, as well as his son-in-law at dinner at Leonie's brother's house that night, but for some reason, instead, they decided to go back to the house. When they got back to the house, they found that all of the power was out because Christine had used an iron that had fused, like blown a fuse in the house, which is why all the power was out. And this was kind of like a common occurrence. It had happened, that was the second time that it had happened that week. And they had literally gotten it back that day. Christine had to go and pick it up herself and had to pay for it out of her own money to repair the iron. And the repairman didn't find anything wrong with it. So Madame Lancelin was furious about this. She just went absolutely berserk at them, which is when Christine picked up this pewter jug and just smashed her over the head with it. So then Genevieve came and tried to stick up for her mother, and then her and Christine started fighting, which is when Leah got involved as well. They were at the top of the stairs on the little landing, and Christine like lunged at Genevieve and literally tore her eyes out with her hands. And then she ordered Leah to do the same thing to Madame Lancelin and tear her eyes out while she went to go get a knife and a hammer. She then ran back and bludgeoned both Leonie and Genevieve and also like was slicing them and using the pewter jug to like bash their heads in. It was totally gruesome. According to experts, the entire thing lasted for 30 minutes, which is an insanely long time to just like torture somebody. The girls later admitted that Christine and Leah were moaning and screaming during the whole thing, but they couldn't hear what they were saying, or more like they didn't take any notice of it. Then after they decided they were definitely dead, they decided to kind of prepare them as if they were preparing to cook them. Christine actually described it as the way that you would cook rabbit from this like cookbook from 1901. So specifically they were getting them ready to cook like a specific dish from a cookbook. Then after they did that, they decided they weren't done. They decided to lift their skirts up, take their underwear off, and they decided to slash all of their legs and their bums. And then, kind of like they were basting them, like putting a sauce on them, they decided to use the blood from the girls and rub this all over their bodies. Then after that, they decided they were done, I guess. They tidied up the house a little bit and then got ready for bed, got into their pajamas, brushed their teeth, whatever, and got ready for bed as if it was the most normal thing. So then at around 6:30 or 7, the girls had never shown up for dinner, so Monsieur Lancelin was a little bit concerned. He and his son-in-law went back to his house to see if they were there, what was going on, and then when they got there, the entire house was locked. It was super sketchy. There was also like a candle flickering in one of the upstairs windows, so he was very sketched out. He decided to call the police, and the way the police got in was by scaling a back wall. Then when they got in, that is when they discovered the literal most disgusting, gruesome murder scene of his wife and his daughter. They saw that most of the injuries were on the girls' faces, and they were so bad that they were unrecognizable. They saw all of the stab wounds all over the legs. They saw that there were teeth missing and all over the floor. Their eyeballs were gone, obviously. They found one of Genevieve's eyeballs on top of the stairs and then another one under her body after they moved her. And they found Madame Lancelins. One of them was like hidden in her scarf. Madame Lancelin was found lying on her back with her legs apart and just one shoe on. And Genevieve's body was found face down. Both of their skirts were up and their genitals were exposed. So because of the time it was indecent to take photos of them. So they like pulled their pants up and put their skirts down before they took any crime scene photos or anything. And they found next to their bodies a bloody knife, and there was just blood everywhere. Like so much blood, it even got onto the walls 2 meters up. Obviously, after discovering the bodies, they searched the rest of the house, and at the time they were fully expecting to find that something had happened to the Papin sisters as well, and they did not expect them at first at all. When they got to the maid's room, they found that the door was locked, and so they had to get a locksmith in to unlock it so that they could get in, which is when they found the 2 girls in their dressing gowns. Some people say that they were naked, but most of the sources I found said they were in their dressing gowns. They were clutching each other extremely closely. They were completely clean, but then they had the murder weapons in there, which were covered in blood. So immediately they arrested them, took them into custody, and the girls immediately admitted their guilt. They explained everything they did. They explained that they were basting them and that they were like getting them ready as if to cook them like the rabbit dish. They told them everything, the fact that they were yelling out and they couldn't hear what they were saying. So they took them into custody and put them into jail immediately. When they were put into prison, they were separated, and they became extremely distressed when they were separated, especially Christine. She tried to gouge her own eyes out. She was having fits, and she admitted that she was experiencing the same fit the night of the murders. And so they let them see each other. They let them have kind of like a meeting, which was supervised. And they said that in this meeting, they were acting as though, and they were saying things which indicated that they had had a sexual relationship. They were examined by multiple doctors to determine their mental state, to determine the state of their relationship. They said that Christine was definitely the dominant sister and that Leah looked up to her. And they also said they were both competent enough to be held accountable for their actions and to stand trial, and that they knew that what they were doing was wrong. So the trial began in September of 1933. It went for 13 hours and it took the jury 40 minutes to convict them of the crime, but they were both sentenced differently. Leah was only sentenced to 10 years of hard labor because it was determined that she was heavily influenced by her sister, but Christine, on the other hand, was sentenced to death, but this was later commuted to a life sentence. As soon as Christine got to prison, she showed immediate signs of mental decline. She was extremely depressed. She stopped eating, and then because of this, they moved her to a mental prison where in 1937 she died of a word I can't pronounce, but I will put on the screen, which basically is she died from wasting away. Leah was released from her prison sentence after 8 years in 1941, and she then went to live with her mother. And she passed away in either 1982 or 2001. Different sources say different things, so I'm not really sure. But that is the entire story, the entire case. Of course, as with all of my cases, if I have missed anything, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, because I would love to hear it, and I'm sure everyone watching this video would also like to hear it. And let me know what you think of the case down below, any cases that you want me to cover in the future, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye!